Well, good morning, everybody. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and today's actually my first day back at Nutrien. I'm very thankful to have this position, and I appreciate all of you that kind of followed me as I bounced around over different YouTube channels this past several weeks. But we're going to be pretty steady now back into this channel, and I'm excited to be here and to do great things with Nutrien. So, in the meantime, we have got a very, very important shift in the atmosphere to talk about, and we've got questions as to how long it lasts and what it's going to mean for us, because the atmosphere is about to do its typical spring, acrobatic tricks here, which means a lot of chaotic weather patterns. And it starts with this. You've been staring at an animation of the jet stream winds from last week. This was actually on the 28th. And throughout much of February and back into January, even in December, we saw repeated jet stream extensions that have gone to north of Hawaii and then busted up, leaving little cutoff lows in places. But the flow was really coming at us weekly through the United States, and at times more north, south, and west to east. And you know the consequences of that, because we've lived through December, January, and February, and where it's placed snow and where it's placed cold air. So a lot of us in meteorology are excited to see this. You're going, well, what? Okay, this is busted up over here now. We no longer have just one continuous strip of incredibly strong winds, and we're very excited about this. That is, coming over the western mountains, a neutrally tilted trough, which means the trough axis is north-south, with a piece of the subtropical jet coming into the base of it right down here. We have not seen this particular setup in a long time. Now, spring is, of course, famous for making this particular setup, but what's the point of telling you about it? It means that this system is going to curl up into the central U.S., and it's going to linger there a bit longer than the systems we've seen before. And what we're questioning is, how often are we going to see a pattern like this through the rest of the month of March? Because using several different tools to kind of figure out where the jet stream is going to go, it is on a retreat back toward Japan. We call that a jet stream retraction. It's on a poleward shift, which tells us where the strongest winds are going to be with respect to, the equator to poleward region of the Pacific Ocean. And okay, so instead of being here, it's going to be a bit more up here. And that will also help influence the temperature pattern across North America. It's going to influence our access to moisture. And so to see this is a critical change in the flow of the atmosphere, which has been, alluded to for the last week and a half or so. Now, what I need you to remember about this is that this shift is great right now in spring. But summer, of course, an entirely different season, brings with it different seasonal attributes to the jet stream flow that influence our pattern. And I don't want to see a poleward shift of a retracted jet in summer, because what that tends to do is that tends to build up these ridges, like one here and one there, and then another one over by Europe. And what that often does is spreads widespread risk of drought across much of the United States and Canadian prairie. So we just need to have a look at it now and see the consequences, but understand these will give us entirely different ramifications come summer. All right, enough with all that. Let's get into the big picture here. This is what we're watching carefully. These are jet stream level winds. And by 6 a.m. on Tuesday, getting to midday Tuesday, I'm going to show you this jet streak, which is a part of the jet stream that's a bit faster than the surrounding winds, and the position of the upper level trough, which is there. Now that line, if you notice, it's kind of leaning back to the west as you go from south to north. We would call that a negatively tilted trough. I don't feel like I've seen one like this in months. The downstream ridge is kind of here. I'll try to draw it in dashed lines. And it is also following that same trajectory. So what you get is the winds making this hard turn, really increasing what we call the curvature effect in the atmosphere. And this has everything to do with the advection and movement of vorticity, and therefore, using the Coriolis effect, we just get incredibly strong upper level divergence here. Now you're going, all right, what are you talking about? If we have upper level divergence, that's where air is kind of evacuating aloft, if you will, in the jet stream level. And to fill it in, the air comes sucking in from the bottom at incredible speeds in this counterclockwise flow pattern. And what it does is it blends together these huge air masses, Arctic one here, a really dry one off the mountains there, Gulf moisture here, the flow off the east here. I mean, it just pulls them all together. They collide, they create fronts, and we get some chaotic weather. For us in meteorology to see something like this take place tells us two things. One, we're going to set off a bunch of severe weather to the south and a blizzard to the north. The winds around this are going to be incredibly strong, and it's going to rapidly run through its cycles as it moves toward the north and east. And we want to know, well, is there another one following it here? That guy right there. So we just play this forward. That low goes right over Illinois, my home state, although I'm in Denver right now at Commodity Classic. Then finishes here over parts of the Great Lakes, and then we're just watching the next one. There it is coming in. Now this next one has some different characteristics. It's a much, much more open wave. So you're saying, what's that? Well, that's where the upper level ridge upstream, which is in this direction, comes through. We get a positive tilt on the trough, but a huge open area of very strong upper level winds. And that's still going to create a region of upper level divergence. It's like blowing over the top of a beer bottle and making it make that noise. That's what we're doing here. So what's going on? You're getting a circulation below this to crank systems out. And we just go like, hey, there's another one following it. That is the cadence of these low pressure systems we got to watch. Now, what we need to be very careful of is the low level wind. And what all of us are curious about is going through Monday into Tuesday, how strong are these winds going to be in this vicinity? So this would be winds at about a mile above our heads if you live in the Mississippi Valley, this region, 850 millibar winds. And we call this a low-level jet. And that low-level jet is one of the most important components of a severe weather outbreak to get storm systems to break up instead of being big, long squall lines, but to break up into individual supercells. It then enhances the squall line behavior that typically follows it. But that is a deep 850 millibar low, and we will see very strong winds on the backside of this down to the surface, which is why I think the National Weather Service is going to be busy issuing probably blizzard warnings in through this area. I'll show you some more detail on that in a moment. So that one cranks out. Look at that. And then we have another one that follows. And you can still see strong winds going through this region. And that's, by the way, just through the next 5 days. So you look at our all hazards weather map just a shade after 6 a.m. Central Time this morning. We've got wind advisories all over the place here, high wind watches, high wind warnings, red flag warnings. There are blizzard warnings tucked into this. We can see a large area where there's a winter storm watch. We have the winter storm warnings on the backside. I mean, this is what you get out of a trough that takes on some negative tilt. There is action in the midsection of the country. We just have to ask, how far back to the west are we taking the moisture? So very, very intense setup with this next system that's coming through. Now, I noticed something ahead of it. There was a little wave that snuck out yesterday. It's this guy right here before the bigger one, which is out in the west, moves through. And on the backside of this wave, I wanted to see what was going on here because we did have some showers and thunderstorms in through this area. But if you take a closer look down there into Texas, this is a key indicator. Now, this happens a lot during spring, but this is a key indicator on how dry the last 3 months have been. There was a pretty sizable dust storm that even had some smoke in it from some wildfires down in Mexico, contributing to the much reduced air quality in this area, plus just tremendous winds and dust being blown through here. You can also see down here in the lower Mississippi Valley, there were some controlled burns early this spring. Also one up here in Missouri too. As we go forward, though, it's these winds I'm concerned about. So what we're going to look at here is the high-resolution NAM model. We're going to play it out all the way through Tuesday here and then get into Wednesday and just look at where the model is projecting wind gusts. And I've labeled all locations where we expect those gusts to be above 50 miles per hour. So, I mean, it's here in Colorado, New Mexico, the Panhandles, Kansas. Look at the midsection of the country. Then get over to the Mid-South. We've got incredibly strong winds with this system. These are synoptic level winds. This is not capturing thunderstorm-generated winds. So please be prepared for these winds that are coming with this particular system in these areas. Okay, Storm Prediction Center has been all over this. Remember last week we were looking at their day 7 and day 8 product. Well, now we're day 1 and looking at a large area here under slight risk in Oklahoma and Texas. Day 2, there's a large area of enhanced risk. Let's shrink that up. There you go. That's down here in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Multiple threats out of this, including tornadoes, straight line wind, and hail. So this has kind of got the full package here in terms of severe weather. And then you can come over and see where we're going to be by day 3. Which would be on, 3 days from now. So that would be Wednesday, over here from Georgia all the way up to the mid-Atlantic. So potent system rolling across the country. I'd like to show you several model iterations of this just to kind of get an idea. So let's start at 6 a.m. this morning. We're going to watch the system curl up over the Rockies here. So this will be by 5 p.m. tonight. And there's a lot of us that are in Denver. And we're very curious tomorrow how the snow is going to start early in the morning. I'm talking like midnight in this area and where it's going to get out here into the high plains of Colorado. Because from midnight to about 4 a.m., you can already see the snow spreading in this area. This is incredibly dependent on elevation. So for those of you in Colorado, you know what I'm outlining right here. That is a huge shift And the elevation will give you some downslope flow in these two places. But if you curl flow back around here, it just pumps in huge amounts of snow and can pump in a lot of snow. We'll look at the amounts in a moment. But this is 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And so what we're concerned about is through the day as that front sweeps through, there's your main frontal boundary pushing the last bit of convection ahead. But what's important to look at is out ahead of that is where we're going to be seeing this kind of supercell risk developing. Now this is early in the morning, but later on in the day, that's what I'm worried about. Through the afternoon and evening, this particular corridor having supercells out ahead of the main squall line. Very heavy rains coming up through parts of Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, eventually getting to Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana. But there's going to be a rapid transition on the backside of this to very heavy snow by late in the afternoon on Tuesday. And what that snow could possibly do is you get into, well, just look at this. Look at the pressure gradient. I mean, that's tight. See the spacing of the isobars? We could be seeing, if it lasts long enough, blizzard conditions here, because you're going to have the winds, you're going to have the reduction in visibility, you've got the snow. It's just, can it last 3 hours? But this is going to quickly transition over through this corridor. So you're going to start off with rain and finish with snow, and that low is going to go right over the top of Illinois, then over toward Indiana and Michigan, and take that squall line all the way through the southeast, and then we're going to start watching the next system. Now, as I've told you before, the high-res NAM only runs out 60 hours, so this gets us to noon Central Time on Wednesday. So we got to step over to some of the global longer-range models to see the end of this. So here we go. Same setup. That's what the Tuesday night looks like on the GFS on the left, European on the right. There's the transition to snow on the backside with the wind. The system curls up quickly, moves off into the northeast, which is mostly a rainfall event, and then snow showers on the backside. Meanwhile, more snow is coming into the Rocky Mountains with the next low that's here. But remember, the next low does not have that sharp negative tilt on a trough. So it's going to be a very rapid transition over to this by Thursday. But this low is going to spread a little bit more snow to the north like this, because there's cold air in place. But we're going to watch more rainfall late in the week. Watch Friday getting into Saturday, Sunday. There it is, sitting down here along the Gulf Coast. So as the remnants of that system try to push into the northeast, we're going to watch along the Gulf Coast some moisture. Now that gets you just out 150 hours. That's through Sunday. And as we get into next week, there's going to be just a short lull for the central part of the United States. But take note, there is another system on Monday coming through California into the northwest, and it comes ripping across here Tuesday, Wednesday. We have questions about this system and its access to moisture. So where is it by next Wednesday? It's living right in through here. But this high pressure cell is a bit squished. Had it been a bit more anchored over the Carolinas, we would have opened up the Gulf wide and had a large system. But as it stands, we're still, I'm basically 9 days into the forecast, and we could count up, I think, 5 systems coming at some point across the United States. And we don't expect it to end right away after that. So let me show you the next 7 days by looking at 5 different models. So they're all listed right in through here. Got the European, the artificial intelligence, the GFS, the WPC, and the NBM. And so you just kind of get a good glance at this, but I'd like to focus you in on the European model solution. So as I play this forward, we're going to watch this moisture kind of add up here. That's system number 1. Here comes the second one through Colorado, adding more along the Gulf Coast. If we just go ahead and take this out 10 days, just take a look at some of these precip totals. For Iowa, I mean, I've got snow and I've got rain, and you need it. You need every bit of this. Same thing for Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska needs this. Parts of Kansas, we need this moisture desperately in here. Who doesn't need any of this is this whole region right in through here. It's been incredibly wet for the last few weeks there. Take note of where the dry slot is expected to be. You can kind of get a sense of it here. And we don't have a whole lot because of the trajectory of the storm system in the northern plains. But this is going to be decent snows for the west. It's going to be a lot of moisture in the next 10 days coming into the west coast of the United States, which Marches are often seen as one of the wetter months, especially when they're desperately needed for this area. So you look at this and we still find holes, but there's some places that are getting filled in. Total snowfall, let's do 4 models real quick. This is the European model, total snowfall forecast. And again, so much of this is going to come through on ground that just thawed and had rain on it, and then we're dumping snow on top of that. So that is the kind of snow you get to keep into the soil. This is a needed system in this area. But look at the Rocky Mountains here. Big time snow is coming in the next 7 days. This is the artificial intelligence forecast. And again, I will be removing the extra decimal precision here. Even though the model calculates it, it's not real. But we'll just get that out of there so you can see a little bit better. I'm curious, do you like the yellow numbers on the higher amounts? I kind of do, so I'm going to consider turning over all my maps to kind of show that. But that's the AI model. This is the GFS. So a bit sporadic here in its locations of snowfall, but that will be the way the system is. Spring snowstorms are incredibly difficult to predict snowfall depths because of the ratios are often way off and the soils have sometimes thawed out before the snow gets there. So we're just looking for corridors here. And the final model is the NBM, which is a blend of all of it. And that's what we've got. So take a close look at that map. Okay, on the precip side of it, why this is so important is because if we just look back at where we've been, well, let's start with snow. This is the season-to-date snowfall departure. So while this part of Colorado has seen plenty, that region that's going to get some of this snow is still in deficit. Okay? And there is no snow on the ground right now. We melted all of that with the very mild air. It's pushed that snow line way far up to the north. So another thing to consider here, what will these soil temperatures be? This is this morning. This is by, this evening. Look at that. We're going to get soil temperatures of 4 inches according to the models up in the low 40s in this area. So really a thaw going on here before this cold air comes in. By Tuesday, 6 p.m., and then watch this. All that cold air behind it, that's what we're going to do to those soil temperatures. So that flux going toward the warmer side, I think will be critical to maps like this. That's our current 100 centimeter soil moisture percentile map. And as we look at it, could we possibly, with this next system, because of the mild air we just saw, eat away at this by bringing that moisture in? So speaking of moisture, onto the, keeping on the theme of the wetter side of this, you melt all of it down. This is the best chance of getting over an inch in the next 10 days, meaning that Iowa, this section of Illinois, Wisconsin, the UP, this whole corridor here has a high probability of grabbing at least an inch of liquid. Same thing for down here. And of course, the West Coast. So I look at this and say, all right, we could be great if this system missed this area. We've had too much in this region as of late. But where is it going to be dry? Let's go have a quick look at that. This is the chance of staying under half of an inch. The northern plains, Montana, the Canadian Prairie, this key region of the western high plains down here and throughout the Sun Belt. We're just not able to draw the moisture into those regions with this current setup. So I show you all this in the context of this map. Because since the start of winter, which of course we would say that meteorological winter is over, it's December 1 to March 1, this is how winter treated us. And it was very dry in through this area, very dry in the southwest, and all of our flooding has been through this corridor here. Now, we've had some dryness in parts of the southeast, but I'm not overly concerned about this yet. I think this is going to be an active area for spring, bringing moisture through, and we've had, as of late, some better moisture in the northeast. So just a couple things to point out here as we start thinking about the bigger picture going longer term. So speaking of longer term, just get a good flavor of what the jet stream's up to here by looking at the troughs and ridges. What I'm looking for is when you get red north of the blue, and I don't see it. That means through the next 15 days, we still have a lot of this kind of wave action. There's just troughs moving through an unblocked flow, which is why the week 2 forecasts continue to look favorable. Take a look at them right here. Now there's a problem. And that problem just continues to be in this area. We've got to get these systems to slow down enough, like the current one, to just get more moisture to get drawn back through Texas. And as far back as I can remember giving you these forecasts this winter, there's been this issue, honestly, since November, of trying to return moisture to these areas. Even out there into week 2, we just continue to see the struggle to get that precipitation into this region. So even though I told you the wave train is open and moving, this continues to be a concern. It's out there even toward the end of the month as well. So this is March 15 to the 28th, put out by the CPC. There's a lot of reason to agree with what they've got here, but this is our big concern as we go toward spring, late spring and summer. We talked last week about how many storm chasers are targeting the Ohio Valley, the Mid-South, or the Southeast, and are not planning on having many chase days out here in the plains. I hope they're all wrong. I hope I'm wrong too. And we're able to draw that moisture back into this region. But when you see the late March forecast from the CPC echo what the mid-March to mid-April forecast looks like from the European, and we've been looking at this every video, right? It just continues to show this region missing. And that's just a major concerning point for me going forward because of what the longer-term drought prognosis is in that area. So as just a review, I think we're going to be very tight on our spring windows here, especially into the Ohio Valley. I think that's going to be a very, very tight region for getting crops in, which means when windows open, we're going to have to push quick and get stuff done. I do think we get some late season moisture coming into the Northwest. There seems to be a lot of indications based off of the Pacific jet stream behavior that that's going to be the case. But I've got to get a system to slow down to hit this area. And I'm going to worry about that until there's nothing to worry about. So please be aware of what we've got going on in the southern plains. Okay, temperatures real quick. This is the next 7 days frost forecast, which means we're not done with these punches of cold air despite the more mild outlook that you probably keep seeing. Today's high temperatures, watch how quickly things change into Tuesday. Look at that. That's when the low is coming out of the Rockies. Then by Wednesday, major cold push behind this. We then get into Thursday. The system exits east and just warm up happens behind it ahead of the next system coming through the west. That's Friday's high temperatures compared to average. Saturday, this is going to be neat. We might have temperatures in the Dakotas that are going to be warmer than they are in northern Texas. So take a look at that. There's almost no gradient in temperature there. And then you get into Sunday, another major warm up north. Now, I'm just going to make this statement again. If we continue to see, as we get really more into late March into April, that the northern plains and Canadian prairie continue to stay warm, that's a signal that we have to be concerned about summer drought in the plains. And the reason for that is without that poleward temperature gradient to drive systems in this direction, we have no shot at just getting good moisture back throughout much of the central plains of the United States. And I'm just quite worried about it. So if we look out there, next day 5 through 10, which will be March 8th through the 13th, we continue to see the mild air here. But remember, what I just shared with you is about April and May and June, not now. So what will be interesting to see is by the time we get that wave pattern continue to go, is the cold signal for the west going to indicate more troughs that take on negative tilt, open up around broader ridges here, and just rip systems off in the midsection of the country. That seems to be where this pattern wants to go. So we've already seen the longer term precipitation forecasts. Let's go ahead and have a quick look at the longer term temperature. That is the end of March forecast. Now I'm going to get you all to be very cautious with the very end of March, because while this is what the 15th to the 28th seems to favor, there is still some longer term indications that we get a big push of cold air that's going to get down south by the time we get into the very early part of April. Now I'm not trying to ring alarm bells until you frost to the Gulf Coast. No. Just another push of cold air based off the cadence of these weather systems we've seen in January, February, and what we're hoping will continue to be the pattern going into March. Because if it is there, it's predictable, and I want to keep an eye on that. If I am wrong, and this blows open warm and then doesn't recover, then we're back into the worry mode of where did our polar temperature gradient go? And what does that mean for later on in the year in terms of getting systems to come in anywhere east of the Rocky Mountains? So two things. We're balanced a bit on a knife edge here, but I'll be mentioning that more often in the forecast videos coming up later this week and beyond. Okay, looking at the newest update from the CPC, this is their 1 month outlook for March. So just to compare this to what you saw in the European model, overall it's very consistent. It's almost the same picture. So we just need to take that in. But I also want you to see this. And this is a map that's got me very concerned. They just updated this on Friday. And what they did was they even added more area into this drought development likely region. So getting rid of it here, persisting here and here, but this whole area is now expected to be in drought development. Same thing down here in southern Georgia into Florida. And I understand exactly where they're coming from on this. You've seen these longer term forecasts. You know what we're worried about. And that just has me concerned by midsummer. How far does this spread north and east by that point? So we're going to keep talking about that going forward. All right, last couple things here would be about South America, and then we'll do a quick global update. Lately, we have seen really good rains, big storms. In fact, storms with a lot of hail come through here, but our drought region in Argentina continues to sit north. This area has gone over very dry as the subtropical high has moved in and sat here. But we've seen sporadic storms, just like we typically see with the monsoon coming through in this area. If we just have a look at the last month, this has been our area that's gone over dry, and that's our area that we're concerned about later going over dry, knowing that we've got about 20% of the safrinha corn grown here, a lot of cotton is grown here, and there's other crops too. But we've seen drought, honestly, being eliminated down here in parts of Cordoba, definitely parts of Buenos Aires as of late. And the dryness that we have in this area it's just not it's not a major concern. I did get some new NDVI data, so I thought we'd start off down here into Brazil. And I want to show you La Pampa, which is there, Buenos Aires. Let's go up to Cordoba and Santa Fe. Also, let's include Entre Rios. We are currently sitting right at the 20-year average in NDVI. All right, so just take note of that. So no, I don't have alarm bells ringing in my head over this. We come up here and I choose Bahia and Minas Gerais, and the numbers have dropped off. Let's just get Minas Gerais there. The numbers have dropped off from these highs earlier. This is the dryness that's moved in, plus the harvest of one crop and the planting of another. If we come into southern Brazil, real quick, let's go to Sao Paulo, this is more central Brazil, Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul. Oops, got to scroll up a little bit. There it is. You know, where are we? We're sitting on that 20-year average again, okay? But what I want to show you is Mato Grosso. They're going, holy cow, what the heck happened? Nothing. No, don't worry about this. This is harvest, okay? And this will jump back up. This is the time of year when this occurs. Include Mato Grosso do Sul, and we're looking at that. I'm not thinking these areas are going to struggle going into the rest of March and April. I'm concerned about this area over here having the biggest trouble because we keep seeing these forecast maps where over the next 15 days, this is our dry region. And if this comes back on repeat, especially as we get into the month of April, that would be an early slowdown of the monsoon. But where it's been wet lately, it's going wet. Where it's been dry lately, it's going dry. I mean, you can see that. This pattern seems to be just stuck in South America for at least another couple of weeks. Last thing to finish up with here is just two quick global updates. First one is a 10-day outlook on temperatures. I want you to take note of how mild it is right now throughout much of Russia, this whole side of their Russian wheat belt, and then into Eastern Europe, including Ukraine, which is right in through here. And then I want you to see the precip. We're a bit wetter here in these states, but as you come into the Black Sea region, we're a bit drier. We'll continue to monitor these. These maps are on my website, agweather.com. Please go check that out. Nutrien and I will continue to build out that site to make it useful for you. But that's where I'm going to leave you today. That was a lot of content. Thanks for hanging on the whole time, and we'll just talk again tomorrow. Thanks.